Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a brand new video. So, as promised, I wanted to sit down and give you a little bit of a trip report because, as you guys know, we recently got back from Spain. It's actually been a couple of weeks since we got back from Spain now. And I didn't vlog the trip, and in all honesty, I don't think I could have with everything else that went on. But I still wanted to tell you all about it. I feel huge. I finally hit my third trimester. So yeah, we're in the home stretch, but the trip. So ultimately, like everything I say, all of the negatives, I do just want to, you know, make a point that we had an amazing time. The kids had an amazing time, and it was definitely worth it. But we did have a few bumps in the road, so I posted a couple of short reels of our trip if you wanted to have a look at those, but I will also kind of insert some sort of footage and pictures that I took as overlay. So we were travelling on the Saturday, which was the day after Zach's birthday, and we were flying from London Gatwick, so we had to travel from South Wales to London Gatwick, which normally isn't a massive trip. It's about 3.5 hours. But because we had the electric van, and the electric van doesn't have brilliant range, we did have to stop in Reading for about 2 hours to charge up the van. I made a packed lunch and it was fine. It was fine. We carried on to Gatwick, and we actually used Maple Parking, their meet and greet service, which was really easy. It was really seamless. We just pulled up in the van, got all of our stuff out, went to the reception desk, handed over our keys. They handed me a little slip to keep hold of to hand back to them when we got back, and then we were on our way, and it was right outside the airport, so that was really, really handy. We had actually arrived at the airport far too early though, so we weren't actually allowed to check in until 3 hours before our departure time. So I think we got there around 4 o'clock, and our flight was at 8:15 in the evening. So we weren't allowed to check our bag, the one that we were putting in the cargo hold, for another hour and 15 minutes. So we basically just had to kind of sit. We ended up going into Costa, buying a drink that was way too much money, because how are airports so extortionate? I think I paid like £4 for a can of Coke or something stupid like that. The time came around where we could check in. We were using special assistants, which I 100% recommend, but they'd actually closed the special assistants check-in desk, and they'd also closed the special assistants security, so that was a little bit annoying. And we wondered, you know, what else was special assistants going to be able to help us with, but I'll get to that. We managed to check our bag, we went through security, and luckily there was a really, really lovely lady there who was able to direct us to a completely empty lane of the security section. So my biggest fear in the airport, especially when we're traveling with Avery, is the pressure of all of her medications, but because this lane was empty, there was no one, you know, behind us getting impatient with us, so that was really, really helpful. It did take a little while to get through security. Avery didn't have to come out of the pushchair, luckily. We just had to wheel it through, and then they just had to go over the wheelchair with their weird tester stick thingy, so that was all fine. Eventually got through security. The rest was kind of smooth sailing. We were then able to find the little special assistance area within the departure lounge, which was nice because it gave me a chance to sit down, get Avery's meds ready for the night, draw everything up, and the boys could sit and have a rest. Avery could have a rest. We could get her out of the wheelchair for a little bit, and we basically just stayed there until our flight was called, or, you know, we were called to our gate. Because we were using special assistants, we were actually the first on the plane. I think we were the only ones that had a wheelchair user, so we were the first on the plane. Again, that was another thing that was very helpful, because they almost kept everyone back for like a couple of minutes just to give us that time to kind of get situated. And if you guys remember, I did take like an insert that I bought on eBay for the seat that Avery was going to be sitting into. I know that some of you were a bit concerned that the airline wouldn't allow it. We flew with EasyJet for reference, and I was a bit concerned about it too, to be honest, but we took it anyway. I fitted it to the seat. I didn't really say anything to the staff, and no one said anything to me about it either. But what I will say is I made sure that once I had strapped the seat to the plane seat, I then, once Avery was in it, I then pulled the actual plane seatbelt around Avery and secured it. So the plane seatbelt was visible and secure. So I don't know if that made a difference. But Avery was pretty happy in that. She had her headphones, she had her iPad, and to be honest, she was no trouble on the flight whatsoever, nor with the boys. Flight was quite easy in terms of, you know, it was uneventful, it was fine, but it was very, very late, so everyone was tired. They did have a couple of empty rows in the back, so about halfway through the flight I ended up taking Avery back there and laying her down so that she could have a little sleep before we got there. To be fair, she stayed asleep then for the rest of the journey. Putting her in the kind of push chair and then picking her back up, things like that, didn't really rouse her too much, so she stayed asleep, which was nice. When we landed, we did have to wait quite a long time for them to bring the wheelchair off of the plane so that we could actually, you know, get Avery off the plane. Which would have been annoying, but the pilot, I'm not sure if it was the pilot or the co-pilot, but they were still on the plane and they actually let the boys go in and have a look around the cockpit, and again, whether it was the pilot or co-pilot, but she stayed with them, chatted with them, answered all of their questions. It was really, really sweet, and it was definitely the cherry on top of the day just because it was nice. I remember when I was little, it used to be a thing where as a child you could go and talk to the pilot and have a look around the cockpit. It's just not a done thing anymore, so for the boys to get that experience was really, really lovely. We were then given the wheelchair back, and someone did actually escort us around to the passport control, and there was a special line for special assistance which was completely empty, so we just sailed straight through. Now this is where it all went wrong. We had booked wheelchair accessible transfers. I had paid a lot of extra money for wheelchair accessible transfers because Avery's wheelchair is crash tested, it is safe to be strapped into a vehicle, and Avery to stay in the wheelchair during transfers. When we got there, it was essentially just a very large van, and the poor driver didn't have a clue what we were talking about. It wasn't his fault, obviously, it was the company's mess up. So at this point, it's like midnight, we just need to get back to the hotel to sleep, so we had to just make do. There was nothing that was going to get sorted there and then, so the van was big enough where we didn't have to take the wheelchair apart to put it in, but Avery couldn't stay in it, so Josh ended up holding her. It was a 10-minute journey, so it wasn't too bad, but you know, not really safe, and we're just very, very lucky that we got there safely. When we arrived at the hotel, check-in was all smooth, and they had actually, the hotel, because I'd requested ground floor rooms and I'd requested rooms next to one another because we had 2 rooms because there's so many of us. It looked as though they'd actually upgraded us because we booked standard rooms, but the rooms we were given are actually the newer style from what the research I'd done, and they were next to each other, and they also had big wet rooms as well. So the rooms were lovely. I can't fault, you know, the rooms and the hotel trying to do whatever they can for us. So that was travel day, and I feel like travel day was probably the hardest because by the time we got to the hotel, I still had to get all of Avery's meds ready for the next day. I wanted to unpack all of her stuff so that we could start fresh in the morning. So safe to say I didn't get a lot of sleep that night. I think I went to sleep at about 3 and I was up by about 7. So yeah, I was quite tired, but we managed to get Avery settled. She slept through the night fine, and I let Josh get some sleep as well because obviously he had driven to Gatwick as well that morning too. So we were able to get up then with everything kind of ready for us to go and go to breakfast. In terms of rooms, because the 2 rooms were next to each other, we actually decided to give the boys a little bit of independence and let the 3 boys stay in a room together, and me and Josh and Avery stayed in the room next to each other. The main things that made me comfortable with that was the terrace outside was completely enclosed. There was no way that, you know, Eli could have climbed over the wall and, you know, gone walkabout to the pool or anything, and they were completely conjoining, so we could literally go outside of our room and their terrace is right next door. We could literally see into their room from where we were. And we also made sure we had an extra key to their room as well, so that all worked out great, and I think it was really nice for the boys. Our first day was definitely just a chill day, and it was probably one of the, you know, what probably was the hottest day that we were there. We went and had breakfast, and then we sat by the pool for pretty much the entire day. Avery did brilliantly. We basically just went from kind of her being in her wheelchair to her being on a sun lounger with one of us, or we did try using the seat insert on the sun lounger, but it didn't work brilliantly. I think it was just too, like, Avery was just too hot and bothered to be in it. took Avery in the splash pad. The boys barely left the pool. It was a nice, like, chill first day, but I think come sort of 4 or 5 o'clock we were ready to go back to the room. So we ended up going back to the room for a while, and it became my little routine, sort of each evening, sort of between being in the pool and going to dinner, I would get all of Avery's meds and everything done for the next day. One thing we did struggle with was trying to get all of Avery's syringes clean. So what we ended up doing was filling loads of water bottles with the hotel's filtered water, their drinking water, coming back to our room, boiling the water, which, you know, we had this tiny little travel kettle which didn't boil much at a time, and then filling the sink with that. And the sink was huge, so it took forever to fill, and then washing them that way. We just wanted to be really vigilant about making sure Avery didn't get any tummy bugs from the water. So that was definitely a massive chore each day. I would also, like I said, do up all of her meds, do up her water for the next day. Again, we had to go through the same process, use the filtered water, boil it, and then fill up her flush water bottles. We also made sure to give Avery 200ml of Diorolite every day, just to make sure she stayed hydrated. So that was something else I needed to sort out. And then alongside that, I also needed to go and kind of sort the boys out, make sure they were all showering and putting on their clothes for the evening, shower myself, sort Avery out. Obviously, you know, it wasn't all me, I had Josh's help as well, but that sort of evening time, it definitely wasn't relaxing. Alongside all of this as well, I'm also constantly on the phone to onthebeach.com, which is who we travelled with, trying to sort out this transport issue, because obviously we didn't want what happened on the way to the hotel to happen on the way back to the airport. Day number 2, the weather was pretty miserable in the morning, which was a little bit of a downer, so we decided to take the shuttle bus which the hotel provided into the main town, Torremolinos. Had a little wander around, that was nice. Luckily the sun did sort of come out by about 3-4 o'clock. I mean, to be fair, we went back to the pool and the boys still went in the pool even when the sun wasn't out. They were perfectly fine, and it might have actually been a blessing in disguise, because it was a bit of a reprieve from the heat for Avery. She definitely seemed a lot happier that day, and I think honestly it was because it wasn't so hot. The third day was kind of the same in the sense that it was a bit cloudier in the morning and then it brightened up come afternoon. But essentially, apart from that once going into town, a lot of our days were kind of the same. Our evenings, we weren't too keen on the evening entertainment. The kind of mini disco they did was a little bit too young for the boys, and I think it was so loud that it just was a little bit too overwhelming for Avery when she was already quite tired. So what we ended up actually doing was going to our little terrace areas and playing cards, which the boys really enjoyed, and I think it kept us up just late enough where we didn't feel as though we were wasting any more of the day, but we were still able to get, you know, a decent night's sleep, and we weren't out too late, so it worked out well. That way we could also put Avery to bed on time, you know, her normal bedtime, and we could still keep an eye on her through the window, so it worked out fine. I don't think any of us were too disappointed that, you know, we didn't do more in the evenings. Now, like I said, most of our days kind of, you know, looked the same in terms of we spent most of it by the pool, which was perfect. It suited us just fine. We went for our breakfast, our lunch, our dinner, which was all inclusive. The boys really enjoyed getting to eat as much as they wanted. So did I, a little bit too much though. I think I probably came back a stone heavier. I think what put a downer on the trip was trying to sort out this transport. So it got to like our second to last day and I get a phone call from On the Beach, and they are telling me that they're not sure if the transport company is even able to get us a vehicle full stop, let alone a wheelchair accessible vehicle. They're not sure if they can get a wheelchair accessible vehicle, and they're also not sure if they're comfortable giving us any other kind of vehicle because we know, or because, you know, Avery can't travel safely in it. So I'm losing my mind at this point because we are traveling, you know, the next day is our last day and we're traveling at early hours of the morning, like 3 o'clock in the morning is when we're supposed to get picked up. It was a nightmare. It put a massive down on our last day because we were just worried about not being able to get back to the airport, and, you know, I made sure to explain to them that we do not have enough supplies for our daughter to be able to miss this flight. So it ended up being a bit of a nightmare. We did manage to get the transport sorted. The transport company did send a wheelchair accessible vehicle, so they did have them. What happened on the way there, I don't know. However, it was supposed to be that we would have the wheelchair accessible vehicle, but they were supposed to send 2 vehicles so that we were all able to fit. On the way back to the airport, they sent the 1 wheelchair accessible vehicle. Alongside the wheelchair, it could fit the driver and 4 other people. However, we were a party of 6, including Avery, which meant we were a seat short. Now this was 3:30 in the morning. There was absolutely nothing that could be done about it, and we didn't have time to waste because we had to get to the airport for our flight. So Josh had to just shove in the back with the boys. Luckily, we were able to work it so that all the boys were able to wear their car seats. Avery was strapped in really safely, and she actually slept the entire way. Like literally, she slept until she got on the plane, and then she even had a nap when we were landing as well. Like, she did brilliantly on the travel days. But yeah, so safe to say we were not impressed with the transport company. We also weren't impressed with on the beach, because really when somebody requests wheelchair accessible transfers, it's because that's what they need. You know, you wouldn't request wheelchair access if you didn't need wheelchair access. And I think as a holiday company, really, they should have done more to make sure that their wheelchair using customers were going to get what they needed. I did get a refund for my transfers, and I am still debating making a big complaint with them, because I feel like this should not happen. I think it's already hard enough to travel as a disabled person / with a disabled party without having extra stresses added on top that could easily be avoided. So yeah, that was the nightmare. But aside from that, all in all, the kids all had a great time. We had tons of smiles off Avery, so that suggested to us that she was happy there. It was nice and warm. The boys had a great time in the pool. Some of us got a little bit sunburnt. I was fine. Josh got a bit of sunburn on his back. Zach got a little bit sunburnt. How the boys got sunburnt, I do not know, because they were all in factor 50 and I was constantly reapplying it. Zach got a little bit sunburnt, but it wasn't too bad. It settled after like a day or so. In and out of the pool, lots of food. I will say the hotel we stayed at was the Allure Sun Costa Park in Torremolinos. It was a little bit out of the way of the town. You couldn't kind of walk into town easily. I think it's like a 20 or 30 minute walk, and that's down a main road. They do have a shuttle bus in and out of the town though, and to the beach. But yeah, their food was okay, like their meals was okay. The snacks are lacking a little bit. When me and the boys went away a couple of years ago, the snack bar had ice lollies, and that's basically what the boys lived on, and it was amazing. Whereas this place, it was more of like sort of a mini dinner buffet that was kept out all the time, and I think we probably would have just preferred being able to grab an ice lolly to cool us down. It was your typical sort of 3-star all-inclusive resort. I think it's meant to be 4-star, but I don't think I would rate it 4-star. The staff, however, were really lovely. They actually sent me a feedback form halfway through the trip, and I did, you know, write some things down expecting nothing to come of it, and then I had a knock on the door that evening, and they were actually trying to kind of make our trip better by addressing those issues. So one of them was that we really like to sit outside when we were eating, but they didn't have any tables set up for a party as large as ours, so they actually made the effort to push 2 tables together, and they popped a little wheelchair like reserve symbol on the table, so that table was reserved for us for dinner and lunch and breakfast, which was really sweet of them. So they did, you know, I feel like the staff went the extra mile to try and make sure our trip was all good. The kids had a great time. I don't regret going. We have said that we probably wouldn't take Avery back to Spain because we found it sort of extra difficult, particularly with the language barrier, but I'm glad knowing that she's had the experience. That was the main thing for me, is making sure she never misses out on experiencing things. And we had a lovely time. I'm glad we went, but just so many hiccups. I think if ever we were going to go to a non-English speaking country again, we'd probably maybe use a better holiday company, like a better travel agent kind of company. on the beach is one of the budget ones, and that's exactly what it was. It was a little budget trip, but we had a great time, the kids had a great time, and yeah, it is what it is. So I've just waffled on for the best part of like half an hour, so yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys again in the next video. Bye guys.